Hey, what's up, Next Level crew? Welcome back to another episode of What's Your Next? And I got great news today. We are not going through the franchise disclosure document. We're actually going to be covering something that you will be exposed to likely if you are investigating a franchise, if the franchise has this opportunity available for you in that franchise, and that is, what is a multi-unit franchise?
Welcome to What's Your Next. This is the go-to podcast for aspiring business owners who want to get to the next level, escape the rat race, and give their middle finger to the corporate 9-to-5. If you want financial freedom, work-life balance, and the business of your dreams, you're in the right place. Dave and Stacy Riska, husband-wife franchising duo, openly share their successes, failures, and lessons learned in franchising, business ownership, and working with your spouse.
We're going to talk a little bit about what that is and how to evaluate a single unit franchisor versus a multi-unit franchisor. And we're going to relate it a little bit back to our own franchise that we own and how we kind of evolved through that process during our franchise early days, and I'll say in our pre-franchise days. So Stacy, let's start off with a little bit of the key considerations that somebody would want to know about and looking at a single unit franchise only.
Okay. Well, a single unit is as it says. It's a single unit. It's one unit, one territory. And so for a lot of people, it can be a very smart way to start. It's kind of like dipping your toes in the water, or if you're going to be an owner-operator and you just want to kind of own your area and do something on a small scale. Or, on the other hand, if you just have limited resources, but you're so committed to being a business owner, being a single unit owner can be a good way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then what would be the reasons why somebody would consider not just a single unit, but looking at a multi-units of the same franchise?
Great. We really encourage our candidates to really consider multi-unit ownership, going out of the gate strong. And there's many reasons that you would want to consider multi-units up front. It's a very smart decision if you're committed to the franchise that you're going to be owning and operating. Dave and I know from doing many territory checks for our candidates that these things sell out fast, especially in really hot areas. It's a combination of a hot growing area and a very hot franchise. And if you don't snag the available territory now, it's going to be gone. The good news is that you're not paying all this exorbitant money up front. You're paying for the one territory up front, and then you'll pay ancillary for the additional franchises, but they're the rights to the territory almost always at a very discounted price. But you don't have to buy all the equipment, the real estate, the staffing, everything you need. Eventually down the road, you don't have to pay all of that on day one. So Dave, kind of give the example of us kind of thinking about our plan to grow in our franchise, because we were toying between, do we do a 1-pack, a 3-pack, or a 10-pack?
That's a great point and question. And so when we were looking at our franchise, we went into it with big dreams, I would say, where we didn't want to be limited into just, and in our franchise, it wasn't really territory based. It was what they refer to as units based. And each unit would be, in our case, either it could be a storefront, it could be a mobile food truck, or it could be what we refer to as a mobile tiki bar that we would take out and set up somewhere. So each of those represented a unit. And when we looked at it, we were like, well, I don't think one unit's going to work for us. I mean, we really want to try to make this into a pretty good income stream. So one unit is probably not going to give us what we need. And fortunately, we started off with a 3 unit because we outgrew that easily in the first 6 months. We had 3 units in the first 6 months. And eventually, we ended up, and we talked about this in previous episodes of the FDD about transferability. We had a couple, a franchisor approach us that had a quote-unquote empire builder that they were willing to transfer to us, which was 10 units of available units in our franchise. So we ended up acquiring 13 units in the first year that we were in our franchise. Now, in other franchises, these units may be represented by different territories. Mm-hmm. And I think what Stacy said, that point about, is really important about, hey, if you're in a hot area and you're going into a franchise that's popular or quote unquote a hot franchise, and you really believe that eventually you're going to want to expand your operations beyond just that one single area, then you probably want to look at a multi-unit franchise, in this case multi-territory franchise.
Yeah, because here's an example. You're right here, you own this territory. If you don't claim the adjacent territories and it's a good, hot, growing franchise, somebody's going to come in and take it. Do you really want that and then kind of have this adjunct, not together kind of territory areas? So if you're committed to growing and dominating, it just makes so much sense to claim those territories up front.
In so many ways. I mean, logistically, it makes so much sense if you have a territory right next to the next closest territory. As Stacy said, it's nice because you don't need a separate set of operations or buildings or real estate in some cases to operate in the other territory that you're have acquired as part of a multi-unit. And what can happen is if you don't lock in that territory, you could probably get other territories, but it could be 30 miles away. It could be 50 miles. Or it could be another city in some cases. So it's really important that you at least understand what multi-unit means. And when you're looking at franchises, it's probably a good idea to ask questions regarding, do they have multi-unit availability? And if so, you should highly consider possibly stretching a little bit and acquiring a multi-unit franchise if you really believe that you're going to go, pretty hard and fast into that particular franchise.
Yeah. I think it gives you a much better saleable asset at the end of the day. A lot of people look at franchising because they're looking to grow it and have something at the end of the road that's a sellable asset. And when you think of the economies of scale, it just makes so much sense because let's say a 1-unit franchise may be $30,000, but then you can get 2 for $50,000, and then you might be able to get 3 to 5 for just an additional $10,000 more. So most candidates that we work with end up needing some kind of funding anyways. And if you can get approved for just that little bit of additional more, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 more, you're better off getting that territory now, because if you only commit to the one and then in 3, 4, 5 years you're doing well and you decide you do want to grow, well, guess what? You're going to have to start all over again with another single unit. So that's the economies of scale.
Yeah, obviously the economies of scale make a lot of sense in multi-unit franchises and in the assets. As Stacy said, when you acquire multiple territories, somebody coming in from the outside is probably looking at it in some ways the same way you might be, in that, hey, I'm not just buying this one little territory, I'm buying this whole area. I'm getting 10 of these, as part of this transfer of ownership of this franchise, and therefore that asset in general would probably be worth more in that particular type of transfer. So I think it's really important that, again, you understand what multi-unit means. Depending on the franchise that you're looking at, do they have it available? Do they offer multi-unit? Some of them do not. They will only let you start with a single unit, and you have to earn your way to acquire more units. Some of them actually have some pretty good promos where they'll actually say, if you buy one territory, we'll give you a second one free. If they do, you might want to take them up on that offer, because again, getting these extra quote-unquote units or territories can be really important in the growth of your franchise and the operations down the line if they are adjacent and connected to one another.
I think it's a great way to think about it, especially if you're coming in and you have an empire builder mentality, right? You're not just looking to do a business to buy yourself a job. You're doing it because you want to grow and scale and become an empire builder and dominate an area. And by you sticking your stake in the sand and saying, we're going to own this area, it's actually a great way to kind of keep the competition out. And if you're with a really good franchise that has good marketing systems in place, you guys are going to own and dominate the area. So think big, think empire builder, think multi-unit.
Absolutely. Great way to go.
You want to close it out?
Yep. All right. We are done with multi-unit franchises. I highly encourage you to take a look at multi-units if you're investigating a franchise, even if you don't decide to go that route. It's good to know what's available. Again, sometimes there's some negotiating power in that, in and of itself. Usually fairly large discounts as you acquire more units, territories, whatever the franchise is offering. So that's really it for multi-unit franchising. If you like our content, again, like, subscribe below. If you have any comments you want to leave for us, again, feel free. We'd love to get comments from our listeners, and we will catch you on the next episode of What's Your Next.